Good evening. Hi, you've got old Birdman Mel here. And who are you out there in the audience? We need to hear from you. As you can tell with my and we're going to be doing owls tonight. And actually, I'm going to give you a question right off the bat. We all had supper tonight, but what I want to ask you is, who cooks for you? Who cooks for you? Somebody give me the answer to that question and you're going to win a prize. And I wanted to remind you that all through this show, we're going to do our best to have some fun, have a smile together in these tough times. But we're going to try to learn some things too. And we're also going to make it rewarding. We're going to be giving away prizes. So please go online, those of you that have been with us. Let us know where you are from. We really love knowing what city, what state you're from. Sometimes like when Julie, and I got to say I'm excited. Julie Lundsted's going to be here talking about owls. And hopefully if her husband Jim gets home in time, he'll join in at the end. But they're going to help us on a great program on owls. But it helps us to know where you're from. So do that. Let us know right away. Go ahead and put there on the come on in and tag a friend too. Tell them about us. And if you like it, tell them you like us. And we appreciate that very much. Before we get to the star of the show and the owls, you noticed last week I started a trend where I just got to have a few moments where I tell you some of my favorite gift items each week. And I tell you some of my favorite functional. Well, I want to start on the functional. If you can see here in the camera, this here barred owl house, that's a big old rascal, ain't it? Well, it's from our good friend, Mr. Stovall up in Wisconsin, makes these things for us, God bless him. And it is the best barred owl house, bar none. And I just thought of that. That's kind of cool. And you want to know about a barred owl? I mean, this here, another friend up that way, Margaret Combay, makes these Christmas ornaments. And she makes 5 different owls. And if you happen to get the National Wildlife Federation magazine, you'll see her new screech owl is in there. So this lady, if you want to have fun collecting ornaments, and we're going to do it with our grandkids, we're going to put ornaments on a little tree of just the birds we see in our yard. And we're going to have to see that owl that we've all heard a bunch, but I don't think I've showed the grandkids a barred owl. So I'm glad we had this program. It's given me something to do. Okay? But the other functional thing, we do sell gazillions. You see this old boy here? This is a screech owl house, and I know Julie's going to talk about screech owl. Another version here. And then all around me, my good friend Kevin Offerman. Thank you, Kevin. Have you ever seen my set? Looks so good. That's why we started way out big like this. We got all these owls in at Songbird Station where you can go and buy if you're in central Missouri. But if you live out in the country somewhere else, what do I always tell you? Go find that independent retailer that takes care of you, that's there to answer questions about where do I put this owl house? What can I expect? By the way, he'll remind you, and this one comes with wood chips in it, which boxes when you put up a next box needs wood chips, which ones don't. There's a lot to getting birds to nest besides just buying a house. It's about where do you put it? How do you put it? When do you put it? And your local retailer can help you with that. We're going to give you a crash course today, but they'll help you. Got some other fun gifts. We even got chip and dip sets with owls on them. So that's a lot of fun. One thing I didn't want to forget, we have owl sticker sets. And if you've got some children out there watching, snap a picture of them, post that online, and then send me a private message. Any children that's watching tonight, I'm going to send a free sticker collection thing of owls in North America. It's just, one of our goals is getting children away from just total technology and involved in God's nature that He's got around us. So get them sticker kits. The other thing we're going to do, you answer some questions. Here's the other question, and of course that was a barred owl I gave you before. What is America's favorite bird? Giving you a couple hints right there on the screen, and I got a reason for doing it, I'll tell you. The other thing we're going to be giving away is we got these great gift sets that come from a company called Lures, and it's a great horned owl, a Peterson owl assortment, and another assortment. So if you got friends that you want to, just write a special little note and say, how's it going? These are great to use. We've also got great books, Hawks and Owls. We got books like this one here, Our World of Owls. Stan, next week's author, does this one. And we'll talk about some other books. Our book of the month, I believe, is Intriguing Owls over at Songbird Station. So go to that local retailer. You can get these kind of books there at a very, very fair price. And again, when you have a question, they'll be there for you. That old Amazon guy, I can't ever get him to pick up the phone and answer my questions about what's going on in birding. If you can, let me know. Okay? So some fun things going on here. We're going to move back away and let the real star of the show come on board now. But before we do that, in just a second, I almost forgot. I got one more thing I need to do. I asked you guys earlier in the show, and to send in photos and videos of hummingbirds, and oh my God, what a difference a week makes! My hummingbirds, I don't know about you, but whew, this morning was the first morning it was lonely out on the porch having coffee. No hummingbirds there. I posted a picture. I was very sad, but I'm leaving that feeder up because there'll be some stragglers come through that will say thank you, Birdman Mel. So make sure you leave at least one feeder up. We were going through gallons a day, and then boom, the old weather changes, the light of day, all sorts of things like Stan went through a week or so ago. So it is a changing world we're in. But we got winners, and boy, this was tough. You guys all make sure you look through the spot where we got all the photos that were there. It was so hard for our committee to pick the winners. But I do have to say, Anthony Welch, and I think it was submitted by your mother Janet, and I'm not sure where you're from, Anthony, so if you'd let us know publicly what state or whatever, we'd appreciate knowing. But that photo you had of that hummingbird with that big old mouth, the minute I saw him, I started laughing. And I have to tell you, folks, humor always wins with old Birdman Mel. But I'd never seen one with quite that pose. So you were the winner of that one. Had a gazillion people I could have guessed second place. Joanne Peterson from Minnesota, you got it, and you're going to get a prize too. And if you guys want to reach out and let us know, you can get a choice between the small and the large version of this stained glass, or you can get one of our great Songbird Station the Songbird Essentials hanging glass baths. So let us know. And last but not least, Stacy Fackeson loved your video. You won the video. So those are our winners. We'll be thinking of some more contests very quickly. I'm very aggravated at myself. I forgot to set one up. But I'll tell you one right now. Send us in any pictures you got of owls in your yard, and that's an automatic winner. I'll be sending you something, and let's try to have an owl contest. And then as the new arrivals come in, the first time you see that junco down there, or one of the other birds from up north, pine siskins, some of you guys are going to see a lot more of in the Northeast, is what I just read. And even, some things we don't always see will be coming your way. So keep us abreast. Keep those photos coming. I promise you we'll come up with some ways to say thanks. Okay? So want to move on now to, the fact that we're here to talk about owls. And you guys have had this lady on last year, and you said, please bring Julie and Jim back. And we hope Jim gets here. But tell you what, you got the best one of the two, Miss Julie. So, Miss Julie, you out there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, I'm going to turn it over to you to help me educate this world about some owls. How about that? Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
Man, that was quite an intro. I don't know if I can live up to that or not.
Oh, I know you will.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. I can see it. Okay. Well, I thought what we did last time with the woodpeckers kind of worked well. We thought, let's talk a little bit about owls in general and some fun facts about owls and all sorts of things about owls. And then I'd like to share with you some of our favorite owls that we have seen from across the United States. That sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. Well, there are over 225 species of owls worldwide. That's a lot of different kinds of owls. There's 20 in North America. There's a lot of visitors that come in, maybe just in the winter, but there's 20 breeding species in North America. And, many cultures think owls are bad luck or omens of death, or they're messengers of witches, like Harry Potter, maybe.
Ooh.
Right.
I don't believe that stuff.
I don't either. I love owls. Owls, I think, are one of my favorites. But Jim always laughs because every time I talk about something like woodpeckers or owls or bluebirds or tree swallows, I always say they're my favorite. Everything is my favorite. I think the one that I'm talking about or looking at is my favorite. Also, owls are always considered wise. I think it's because, they have big eyes and they're kind of mysterious and they're fairly silent too. So some of the owls that we have, the smallest owls, I mean, these little guys, okay, think about the size of a house sparrow or a little bit bigger than a goldfinch. That little elf owl, he is that big. He's about as big as a sparrow. I mean, that's a teeny tiny little owl. And that northern pygmy owl, He's not much bigger at only 6.2 inches. That's pretty darn small. Some of the, now let's go to the big ones. The Eurasian eagle owl is the biggest owl in the world. And the great gray owl is the one that we get in North America that's the largest. And let me tell you, I have seen one of these. They are absolutely breathtaking. They are so big. I mean, up to 33 inches tall. That is a lot. And also, you'll notice that these guys don't weigh very much. Birds in general don't weigh very much. I remember on Mel's program when he talked about the hummingbird weighing about what a penny is. That's hardly anything. Well, that's because their bones are hollow. Birds need light weight so they can fly distances. So that's why their bones are hollow, and they just don't weigh very much. Even though they're big, they don't weigh much because they're flying around. Okay, so one of my favorite things to talk about is what makes an owl an owl. Well, one of the things is mostly they're nocturnal. That means they're only out at night. There are a few species who are diurnal, meaning they come out at day and night. That adds to the mystery of owls. You know, we don't get out very much at night, especially in the wintertime when they're easier to see. I personally don't get out very much. It's too cold. I'm all cuddled up on the sofa, watching maybe my favorite baseball team right now, you know.
Hey, that's a hint to America's favorite bird, folks, right here. The
Exactly,
Cardinals.
Mel.
Hey, sorry, had to get that one in last time
No.
I checked. And don't you dare leave us for the Cardinal game. They're gonna beat them. They're already winning 4-1. Okay.
Also, owls are considered to be a raptor. Think eagles and hawks. Raptor in Latin means to seize or grasp, which is how they kill their prey. They seize or they grasp it. And they're also relatively large wing to body size. Their wings are huge compared to their body. One of my favorite characteristics of the owls are their hearing. And we all know that owls can hear very well, but I bet you don't know how they can hear so well. If you notice in the picture,
How, Julie?
Pardon me?
I'm messing with you. How do they hear, Julie?
You're so funny. The ear flaps are slightly off. They're lopsided, and which is kind of weird. You're thinking, well, why would they be lopsided? Well, this all goes into how well they can hear. This means that they can hear the left versus the right ear by 0.0003 seconds, or 30 millionth of a second difference. So when they're out and it's pitch black, there's no moon, there's no light, and they're hearing a mouse creeping across the ground, they can turn their head until they can triangulate exactly where that mouse is without even seeing it. So those ears, hearing a little bit different, say the left ear hears it just 30 millionth of a second faster than the right ear, they know to turn their head just a little bit until they hear the sounds that the same, and then boom, they strike. Also, another adaptation for their hearing is their facial disc. The owls, you'll notice, have a disc in their face, and that helps funnel the sound into those ears. No other birds have that kind of a face. It's kind of neat. A great gray owl, like the one on the left, he can hear a beetle running through grass 100 feet away. He can also hear a mouse squeak about half a mile away.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And there's a lot of studies out with barn owls especially.
That's that guy I'm looking at, right?
They're amazing with their hearing. There's been a study I read about putting them in a building with a total absence of light. And the mouse, they released a mouse in, and the mouse was dragging a piece of paper so the owl could hear that paper better. And every time the owl would strike that paper as opposed to the mouse, because he was tuning in on that sound. It's just remarkable to think of that. I certainly couldn't do that. I'm getting older, my hearing's going. So I am definitely not an owl.
That's amazing. Julie, somebody asked a question. How do owls keep warm? Can you address that?
How do owls keep warm? Actually, a lot of birds keep warm kind of the same way. They will fluff their feathers to capture air underneath their feathers, and that helps kind of like a down jacket. Think of a down jacket. And also they need fuel to keep warm. So they need to eat those rats, those mice, all sorts of things like that. Frogs, grasshoppers, crickets, whatever. They need to eat to fuel. So that's two of the ways that they stay warm. Also, especially when they're not hunting, they'll go up against like a tree trunk or go into a pine tree, like long-eared owls. You'll find flocks. I've seen up to 20 long-eared owls huddling together in a pine tree, staying warm. So there's a lot of creative ways that birds do stay warm throughout those bitter, bitter cold times.
Good question. Good answer.
Excellent question. Another super fun characteristic of owls is their eyes. They're super large eyes. They're large and forward facing. They can't move their eyes like we can. We can keep our head straight and we can look to the right and we can look to the left. Owls cannot do that. The eyes are fixed in the socket. And they're not really eyeballs. They're more of a tube. So that means they have to move their head to see anything. So they do have binocular vision, meaning their eyes can both see at the same time. But then also the right can see by itself and the left can see by itself. They've got quite a wide range since their eyes are so large. But when they turn their head, which is another awesome characteristic of owls, that is the way they move their eyes to see. They can't move the eyes, so they're moving their head back and forth. And the cool thing about that is their neck. They have twice as many vertebrae as we do in our neck. We only have 7. An owl has 14. This means they can turn their head 270 degrees and almost upside down.
Wow.
Now, there's an old wives' tale that always makes me laugh, and I have seriously been asked this. So if an owl's sitting in a tree and I walk around the tree underneath the owl and he follows me the whole time, will his head spin off?
No.
No. They can turn their head 270 degrees, not 360. And also, they have a really cool blood pooling system that when their head does turn all the way, like that barred owl down there, his circulation is probably cut off to his head, but there's a blood pooling system that collects the blood to power their brains and eyes when the neck movement cuts off their circulation. They are pretty cool, aren't they?
They are. Hey, somebody asked 2 quick questions. Can I ask you 2? I know I slow you up.
Absolutely, go for it.
Do owls eat snakes? And do owls mate for life?
Yes, they do eat snakes. I've seen a barred owl with a snake, absolutely.
Okay.
And I don't believe they mate for life, but I honestly don't know. I can certainly do some research, find out, and get back to you. How's that?
Sounds great. And somebody asked, how can I attract owls? And are you going to cover that? I kind of gave them some hints here on the table.
We can't, yeah, I think we will cover that. It really has to do with habitat. I mean, it's not like you can put out a feeder for an owl.
Right.
It really is, do you have the habitat for the owl? There are certainly wonderful things to do, like putting out a screech owl box, which you may get a screech owl. You might get a great crested flycatcher. You might get something else. Who knows?
Yep.
But yeah, it does have a lot to do with habitat.
Absolutely.
So one of the other cool things about owls is their feathers. We've all heard about owls flying silently, right? That's one of the ways they can attract, Jim just walked in, so it kind of distracted me. I apologize. So that's one of the things that people hear is how They are silent and can get sneak up on prey. Well, one of the reason is they have very, very soft feathers. Now, if you're around a turkey, those lumberjacks, when they're moving through the forest, or you hear a Canada goose fly over, you hear the feathers. Well, an owl has a special adaptation to that. If you'll notice in the pictures, the front edge of their very, very soft feathers, unlike turkey feathers, which are stiff, and Canada goose feathers, which are very stiff, they're very, very soft, but then the leading edge has kind of a fringe on it, and that helps cut the air movement, making them silent. I could take that feather and wave it over your head, and you would not even hear it at all. It's quite remarkable.
I think that's proof they're not spooky. God really liked them and gave them some really cool feathers.
I agree. I totally agree. That's one of my favorite things, though, is that their feathers are, remarkably soft compared to like a turkey or Canada goose. Another cool thing about them, they are a raptor, so they do have those very sharp talons. That's what they grip their prey. But also, they are zygodactyl, which means their feet have two forward-facing toes and two backward-facing toes, kind of like the woodpeckers we talked about. But unlike other zygodactyl birds, owls can pivot one of their back toes forward to help them grip and walk. And if you kind of notice in these pictures, especially of that great horned owl, you'll see that they're kind of sideways. That third toe is kind of sideways, so it's kind of moving around as it's going in to grasp whatever it's after. And that snowy owl, his toes kind of look the same way. Those two toes are forward and they're stationary, but then that third toe is kind of moving up to grab that poor little unsuspecting mouse.
Oh yeah, it's just part of the chain of nature.
It is. It absolutely is.
Got a quick request. Can you text me that Z-actal word? I need to use that on my wife Bev in a Scrabble game.
You bet I will.
Okay.
That would get a lot of Scrabble points, wouldn't it?
There you go.
Okay, so another fun thing about owls, and they're not the only bird that does this, is their pellets. Okay, so a lot of these birds, they don't rip their prey up as much as like a hawk or an osprey would. They swallow that mouse whole. They'll swallow that cricket or that crawdad or that grasshopper or that vole. They'll swallow it whole. Well, what's going to happen to that bone and that fur? All those undigestible things. Well, there is one of the most miraculous things. Somehow or another, their stomach will mold and form these pellets with these undigestible parts. And the fur and the soft stuff is more on the outside, protecting the owl's esophagus from the bones tearing it up. So they will then throw this up, and you can see that short-eared owl throwing up his pellet. We have found pellets on some of our bird boxes, which is kind of fun. And you can even buy these pellets from a lot of companies, and they'll send you a little guide as to, you can then dissect it with your kids and everything and figure out what bones, what animals the owl ate. It is super fun thing to do on a cold winter's day. Get you a bunch of owl pellets or I call them owl barf, and tear them apart and see what that owl has eaten.
That is cool.
It really is kind of cool. And one of the best things about owls is their camouflage. I mean, they're out during the day. More than likely they're sleeping. Like this little bird, I don't know. Can you see an owl in this picture, everybody? Maybe, maybe not. That's the point. They're trying to sleep. They are not wanting to be disturbed. So they will get up next to a tree trunk, or perhaps like this little bird, He's sleeping in his roosting hole, and he blends in so well. If you were just walking by, 99% of the time, you would not even see him, I bet. Pretty neat, huh?
Yep.
And
Really cool.
one of the fun things though is if you're ever out in the woods and you hear a bunch of blue jays or crows raising Cain, I mean squawking and throwing a big fit,
Guess
more than
who's
likely,
around?
look around, they probably have spotted an owl or perhaps a hawk too. But they know that that owl could eat them. So they're not excited about it. They're going to let the whole world know that poor owl's just trying to sleep.
Yep. Hey, quick questions. And I know I've been asked this in various forms. And they say, how big of an animal can an owl eat? Is my boxer say. So, what about pets and owls? What do you tell folks there?
That's a good question, and a lot of people do ask that. Um, Owls are opportunistic, yes. Now, it is a very rare instance where an owl will get a pet. Um, that's going to be a hard thing for them to get because there's a lot of people around. Um, they have been known to pick up small dogs. So have hawks. So have eagles. Um, and I've heard lots of stories about little Chihuahua being picked up and the owner screams and the owl lets go. But owls are out at night generally. Pets generally aren't. We tend to keep them in, or they're sleeping as well. Um, a a great horned owl, one of the big owls, one of their favorite food is skunk.
Woo.
So think of that. Think of how big a skunk is compared to compared to a house dog.
Right.
So about that size. Which
Okay.
also goes to show that owls have a very poor sense of smell.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, that's true. Probably not a bad idea though. Once in a while, if you got a real small dog and you got a lot of owls in the neighborhood like we do. I know when we babysit the dogs from next door for my sons, we go outside with them just in case because we know that old owl don't like us.
right, right, and absolutely. I mean, they're not going to seek out a dog, but they definitely could. They could also get a cat for that matter. But it's in a
If that
rare.
cat's outside eating birds, oh,
Right.
I don't want to say what Birdman Mel says. Okay.
Right. Well, it is a rare situation, but it is not out of the question. But it is super, super rare.
Okay.
Okay. How are we doing on time?
We're been buzzing along, so we better be talking about your favorite owls for helping folks get them that
Okay.
sort of thing, or
So
understand
we're going to go quickly through some of our favorite owls. The short-eared owl. This one, as you can see, is coast to coast, so everybody has the opportunity of seeing them. We will generally see them. Don't worry. We will generally see them here in Missouri in the winter. They're one of my favorites because they're out during the day a lot. So they're out in an open field, and they kind of make a sound like a cat, kind of a
Mm-hmm.
kind of sound. So they kind of make me smile, and they have an awesome flight. It's kind of bloopity. I call it bloopity. It's up and down and up and down and up and down. So short-eared are some of my favorite owls. Another one of my favorite owls is the northern saw-whet owl. This little guy, he's one of our smallest as well. I would say he's like 6, 7 inches tall. And Jim's here, and he's going to play his sound because it's kind of fun.
Let's get the other.
He kind of sounds like a saw. That's where he got his name. Somebody sawing back and forth. Okay.
How about that?
Actually, the picture in the middle is one I saw. I took that picture. There was probably 10 people standing there looking at this poor little owl, and he was just watching it. They're very calm. They're a calm owl. They tend to be like in a Christmas tree forest, like at the bottom of a hill. That's where I've seen them. They're and there's surprisingly quite a lot of them around. There's several million estimates, but they're so
Wow.
secretive and so tiny, you just don't see them. Another one of our favorite owls is the snowy owl. And Stan, if you were here last week when Stan talked about migration and interruptions, snowy owl is one of those interruption birds. When the lemming population up north, up in Canada and Alaska, is good, snowy owls will have a lot of young. So then in the wintertime, when food is a little more scarce, they have to disperse quite a bit. So that's when you'll find snowy owls down here in the lower 48. We'll even get them, excuse me, here in Missouri, and we'll see them in cornfields. These guys are fairly easy to spot because they're not skittish. They'll be out during the day. They're not skittish. They don't know. They haven't been around people. They haven't been around cars. And quite honestly, it's pretty sad because a lot of them do get killed because they don't know any better. They haven't been exposed to this. So when there's those interruption years, the bird rehab places do spend a lot of time taking care of sick, weak, injured snowy owls. They are
So,
beautiful, however.
so
So
if
the
you know,
pictures that I have of the ones that are more modeled, those are the juvenile ones. And those are probably the ones that we'll see here in the lower 48.
and if you're in a state where that's occurring this year, be careful. You know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so barn owls. Barn owls are the ones we talked about earlier with the awesome, awesome hearing. They are from coast to coast. They're the most cosmopolitan worldwide owl. And Jim and I were so fortunate to be able to see some barn owls one time. And we sat in these lawn chairs watching these barn owls come out at night. They are very, very nocturnal. Very rarely will you see them during the day. But we were sitting there waiting for them to come out, and we had our binoculars trained on it. We were just waiting, and one landed not too far from us on a perch, and he sat there, and I went like this and made a little squeaking sound to try to imitate a mouse.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned and looked at us, and the coolest thing happened that I didn't know. The facial disc actually moved as he was like triangulating in on where that mouse sound was coming from. Neither one of us said a word until that owl left, and we both looked at each other like, oh, you see that?
Oh my gosh, how cool.
And the barn owl sound, Jim's trying to play it right now.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. It's the scariest sound. That's where a lot of people, could you imagine, 100 years ago, out in the middle of nowhere, hearing that sound? I'm sorry, I would have thought witch and I would have ran. Another one of our favorite owls that also is coast to coast is the great horned owl. This is the owl that everybody calls the hoot owl. We have a great, great, great tip on how to see a hoot owl or a great horned owl. Have you ever seen red-tailed hawks during the day? Probably so.
Mm-hmm.
Great horned owls are like the nighttime counterpart to red-tailed hawks. They like the same habitat. So wherever you see a red-tailed hawk during the day, there's a pretty good chance at night you could see a red-tailed hawk. And I have seen a red-tailed hawk in a tree, and at night, in the exact same tree, I've seen a great horned owl. So that daytime, nighttime thing does hold true. Jim likes to joke and say it's like the old, the Wile E. Coyote checking out cartoon. He's clocking out for the day, and the sheepdog comes in for the day. That's these two. And now their sound is like
Yeah, right.
is definitely like a hoot owl. They do hoot. There you go.
There you go.
Okay, so another fun owl is the eastern and the western screech owls. These guys are tiny little guys. They are spunky. They are the little wildcats. They're fairly easy to attract in by playing a tape recording, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few seconds. So I'll go really fast over these next few. They sound a lot like a horse whinnying. The western and eastern screech owl look very, very similar, but as you can see, their ranges don't overlap. So if you're in California, you're going to have the western screech owl. If you're in Florida, you're going to have the eastern screech owl. So I don't know. This owl may have been mentioned earlier today by someone I know. This is the barred owl. This one makes the funnest sound. It sounds like who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?
Yep.
And one of my favorite things is when they do a monkey call. You'll get a pair together, and they will make this wonderful monkey sound back and forth at each other. These guys are fairly easy to attract in as well if you have a recording, and they tend to be in like near a lake, near a stream, a wetland, a marsh, that kind of thing. A lot of times people who are camping say that they'll see barred owls as they're sitting around a campfire. The barred owls are coming in. They're very curious, quiet, fun owls. I think it's my last. Oh, I got a couple more. This is a great gray owl. These guys will come down into like Minnesota during the winter time. And these two pictures are pictures I took when we went up there one time to see them. You'll notice they're pretty easy to figure out what species they are. They've got that adorable little bow tie. These guys are huge, probably almost 33 inches tall, and they come down south into the lower 48 in the winter time, primarily because, again, like the snowy owl, their food is not as abundant, so they kind of have to come down in the winter time. They are a beautiful owl, and birders flock to northern Minnesota when there's an interruption year, just like we did. This is also a picture I took of a northern hawk owl on that same trip up to see the owl interruption one year. They are a cool looking owl, and as you can tell, they were both out during the day. I'll kind of go fast since we're running short on time now. My final favorite bird is the burrowing owl. We have been lucky to see these guys in California and in Florida. And I think a lot of people on the internet recently are seeing these pictures of an owl when you pull up the feathers on the legs and they have these long, long legs. That's the burrowing owl. They tend to be around golf courses, parks. They like a wide open spot, easy to dig in soil because they do burrow. So finally, I do want to share just a few things, and then we'll be done for the night. Owling tips. If you want to go out and see owls, and I do encourage this, dawn and dusk are the best times to do that. Learn the owls in your area and when they're going to be breeding, because as we approach their breeding season, that's when they're most active. That's when they're going to be easily drawn in by you playing a tape recording of a call. Never, ever, ever during their breeding season. In Missouri, our owls start breeding in January. So in December, I will go out and I'll play an owl tape. I'll attract in a great horned or a screech owl or a barred owl, but never, ever will I go out in January. Because if you do that, you're going to perhaps pull a female off a nest. Her eggs are going to be exposed and they could freeze. You just don't want to disrupt them during the nesting season. Always wear dark clothes. Their vision is very good. So the more you can do to blend in, the better off you are. And of course, be very, very quiet. Their hearing is excellent, absolutely excellent. So we have to be very quiet. Otherwise, if they hear us laughing and talking, they're probably not going to come around. And if you do want to see them, I suggest you have a flashlight, and I put a piece of red tissue paper over it just to filter the light, and I always point it to the side of the bird, never directly at the bird. Remember, their eyes are large and very sensitive. It could hurt them and blind them for a while. So we never ever want to point a flashlight at the owl. And like I said, learn their habitats, and like the daytime, nighttime counterparts with the great horned and the red-tailed hawk. There's several others like that, that you, once you start learning the habitat that they'll live in, they're easy to spot. Go to a lake, you'll probably get a barred owl. Screech owl tend to be around there too. Go to a wide open field, you'll probably be able to see a great horned owl. So just learn things like that. So I would like to thank everybody for joining us tonight.
Well,
and
thank you, Julie.
Turn it back over to Birdman Mel.
Hey, I got a couple other quick questions. Are
Sure.
owls ever hunted by other animals or birds?
Owls do hunt each other, absolutely, yes. And a hawk could potentially be opportunistic, you bet.
Okay.
And you bet a coyote would eat an owl, like if a barred owl was down at the edge of the water and he was distracted and didn't hear a coyote coming up or a fox or something like that, absolutely. A mammal would definitely eat an owl.
How high in the tree do you recommend putting owl boxes, is their question. And
I would think
any
as high
owls
as,
endangered?
pardon me, what was the last part?
Any of them that are particularly endangered?
There are quite a few endangered owls. The ones that I talked about are not endangered. There's like the spotted owl. There's owls like that are endangered, absolutely. And as far as like a nest box, I would put them up as high as possible.
That's what I always tell people too. I mean, I would love to get to 20 feet, but you can't always do that. Just as high as possible is what I tell folks.
Right, absolutely. And as high as you feel comfortable and safe.
Right, absolutely. And I know we don't have a barn owl house that we sell because they're so darn big. I know there are some folks that market those around the country. They're just expensive to ship. There are plans, and that made me think. Even though we have, and your local dealer has plans or has different houses, we are going to be sharing some plans on how you build your own. If you have a husband or a wife or anybody that that might want to help you, we'll share some of those things in the week to come. And just want to thank everybody. Julie, Jim, thank you all so much for being with us. Guys, please post your comments about how you felt about them. I know I loved it. I know our count, Julie and Jim, stayed way high all night. We never dropped off at all, so people were loving it and enjoying it. So thank you, folks, for tuning in. Do keep those questions coming. We will get off the air here and answer the rest of them, and it does help you keep winning. And then I did want to, before we go, I just really want to thank also Jeffrey. He's here with me tonight. He was on cross-country track last week, not there, and Annette and Erica are in the background all the time helping us. And a person I forget to thank that's a huge help to me is my daughter, Becky. She always helps me get on, get off Facebook, get all that stuff done. And when you see my horrible typing, I know you're glad when you can tell Becky comes through and fixes it. So I just wanted to give her a big shout out and a big hug for her help. And most of all, I just want to thank you, because without you being here as an audience, we wouldn't have a reason to do these things. So please keep tuning in. We'll be announcing the winners on the air. And most of all, let's remember owls are, as we talked about their feathers, one of the great gifts of God in nature. And let's every day remember that nature is a stress reliever from God. Take time today to listen to the birds sing. It's Birdman Mel inviting you to join us next week when Stan Tequila will be back, and he'll be talking about things around the winter feeder and all things winter. We'll have the exact title, a little bit more about his session as the week goes on. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.